when we're actually sleeping, we're actually going through the process of upgrading that that energy or that information, and then in turn turning that into physical biological changes that affect the body. That, again, that's just a theory of mine, but I think there might be some evidence to show that the Earth is actually projecting a frequency, and we're actually absorbing a certain frequency and actually changing our DNA based on that information.
Mm-hmm. I see at least 4 or 5 people reacting to that, so I think that's an interesting theory. It also goes along with this theory that actually Earth as a planet, as a living creature, kind of complex living creature, has its own frequency, and that, like, nowadays I hear a lot of talk about it. Like, I'm not sure, I'm almost quite sure it's not in the paradigm of scientific stuff, but it sounds very interesting, and it's just like an interesting idea to explore, at least, and to try, some things, which is very curious, actually, because I was reading the part of the book that is called Pikal, I think Pihkal. It's written by Alexander Shulgin, if you know him. He has like a Russian background, but he was an American chemist who actually synthesized a lot of different derivatives. Hey, you're there. You know that stuff, right? Okay, and and he actually was the foster father of the ecstasy, MDMA, all those things. And what was curious, actually, is a lot of people in the book, they had their trip reports put in that book. And we talked about the peyote. They took up mescaline, I guess, and they had this amazing experiences of, feeling the nature and having like this almost super ability to see things differently. Everything felt so natural, but at the same time, they kind of were united with the nature and like frequencies of different creatures and like their chakras and everything. I just found it very curious to see that experience in the person who has first-time experience with mescaline in the 70s or something, I believe, in such a book. And I was very curious to see that different people have different... It is possible to rationalize it, actually, because if you hear about chakras, like, once in a while, you start, reflecting on that idea, and you start, building some ideas beyond that, like based on that, and trying to find some different, commonalities and differences, and something that is in alignment with that idea. But still, it's an interesting idea to kind of reflect on, I think. Does anybody want to continue on that? Let me see the list of participation so far. Okay, Justin, let me give a word to 3 people after you guys, and I see that Callisti is reacting a lot. So 2 minutes ago she raised her hand, so I believe she has something to add to that. So let's wait for that. So before that, I had a tweeter. I don't see your full name, sorry. In Myelin. So after that is going to be Callisti, and down off don't see the full name. Okay, but be sure you'll get the microphone. Shut this thing. Okay, thanks Mendes for helping me. So, whoever has a megaphone, you are free to speak. Tweeter. Let me find you. Oh, there you go. You do not have a megaphone. Mendes, you are here. Thank God. I was worried.
Okay.
Who was the ghost?
So,
okay.
I agree with you, Mr. Justin. If I'm being completely honest, I believe there actually is some evidence to back that up. In fact, I actually have some myself. So the Earth, I don't know if anyone even knew this, but the Earth actually makes sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that in itself is a lot of frequency. Thank you. That in itself is a lot of frequency. And if we absorb that, like, we absorb a lot of things. So I believe if we could figure out a way to prove that we absorb that, it would... I don't even know what I'm going to say after that. I'm just kind of excited. But I see where you're coming from. I completely understand.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Cool. I love the vibe right now. Okay, so I gave you megaphone, Helion, just in case if you have any comments, because Helion, I believe in our group, has some, more experience and expertise on the, celestial objects.
Astronomy, for example.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the science side. Yeah. Yeah, just picking up on the planetary thing. I mean, you have to be very careful. There is a Gaia theory, isn't it? GAIA, talking about is our planets or is the Earth a living being? I mean, it depends what you mean by living being, but there certainly is a plausible theory about the way that the Earth, in a sense, regulates the amount of oxygen levels. It's not just a random thing, that it's at a certain level. The amount of oxygen we have in the air is not too high and it's not too low. One could argue that the whole of the life on Earth is self-regulating in that sense. And people talk about the Gaia theory. On the planets making noises bit, well, all planets make noises, but that's partly because as they cool down, they contract, and there's lots of seismic sounds and that. Recently, we've been hearing those coming from Mars, because, of course, as Mars is contracting as well as it cools down with age, you do get internal seismic activity all the time. Whether or not you can consider those frequencies or not, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not personally in that line of things, but yeah, these things are very complicated, and it may well be that there's more to the simplicity of planets than we know. You never know. I dare say there's more about the interaction between planets and life on planets than we know about.
Sorry, I was messing around trying to
totally
add some
makes
people.
sense.
Everybody always goes silent when I finish talking.
Yeah, it's cool. That means that you give a very solemn impression. Send Justin, let me give you a megaphone so you can have a comment back.
Sorry.
I was just going to say it would totally make sense in regards to, cells in our brain. They communicate, frequencies from one cell to another. The Earth would also be able to communicate frequencies from one planet or from a sun to another sun. That would give the galaxy the ability to communicate information from one planet to another planet. It's totally plausible.
You're in danger of me mentioning my book, Azzy.
He's in danger of something, but I didn't hear the whole thing. Hold on a second. Let me give you a megaphone. There you go.
I just said you're in danger of getting me going on the book again, because I do talk about pan-galactic communication on there, but no mind. Quantum entanglement. I won't go into it. You come and talk to me later if you want to know about that.
That's awesome.
I have a question, totally random question. Do you see this chemical structure on the screen? I couldn't remember what exactly that was. Like, it's not. Okay. That's not. Maybe serotonin or endorphin, something like that. I believe. No,
Yeah,
no answers.
two benzene
Okay,
rings.
never mind. Yeah.
Dopamine.
Actually,
the hexagons are benzene rings.
Speaking of which, actually the benzene, the thing that you said, like the benzene cycle, the scientist actually who came up with that idea, he saw it in his sleep. So, I'm gonna show
Yes,
you the
you're
video
right.
later. So,
Yeah, that's one of the famous ones. isn't it?
had that
Yes.
fact in it.
Yeah. Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah, you saw them dancing around, didn't he, in a ring? Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Tweeter. Let's go to Myelin. I have a megaphone already, thanks to Mendes, our ghostly... no, not yet. Our ghostly moderator. Okay.
Here
Now
we
you
go.
do have it.
And I have also this kind of mid and daytime and nighttime change, but I just had a little bit experience that when these kind of stuffs are too just breaks your system, or just control it by yourself. And
Sorry,
when
can you speak
first
a little
just,
bit louder? We want to hear what you're saying, so...
Oh, sure. When they were, I usually do work stuff on my computer, do kind of game stuff like that. And when there was a deadlines like a game jams, I just do whole stuff in one day and completely sit down in front of the PC. And meanwhile, I can't eat kind of get, oily or animal oil products like which provides testosterone to help every cells to regenerate and recover their cells. And I'll keep avoid those stuffs because I love those times eating sugar. And after eating these stuffs, I can't just I will keep awake for whole day. I cannot concentrate on what I want to study or do stuff because my brain already just those of stuff's damaged. They need testosterone to recover themselves, and then but I don't like it because I kind of sit whole day in my one day, and what I conclude is that these kind of broken systems like healthy system that doing any kind of daily physical activities which avoids those kind of crucial chemicals like testosterone will block whole brain region and to regenerate, recover their cells. By the way, eating a lot more sugar brings just like keep alertness, but no, and recovering their cells again. Meanwhile, after repeating these conditions, I just got a daytime change completely, 12 hours, and that's what one of the reasons just brings me into this condition. So that's just my experience, but this kind of stuff is just quite obvious and gives the right kind of evidence for why I'm here with this. But controlling these kind of physical activities and then fitness and your foods with enough amount of sugar and other crucial vitamins just brings you just a lot more confident with yourself, even if I just broke my system, sleep system. But these cycles just become pretty obvious. Just controlling all of these stuffs could just keep you healthy and then not just damage it with yourself. Yeah, that's just what I experienced. And
thanks for
I
sharing.
hope this
Yeah. Well,
informative.
also, you saying that these things are obvious, I don't think that sometimes I feel like many things are obvious, but over time I just realized that sometimes like we just have different fields of knowledge, and that way something that you feel like you got used to it and you feel like it's too obvious, I think sometimes other people, they don't think it's obvious, it's just outside their knowledge area. So I would love to hear more about the details. It's not that obvious to me. Okay, and Callisti, you've been waiting for a while, so here you go. You have a megaphone.
All right, thanks for hosting this conversation. I guess I just wanted to, I had a few thoughts. One, though, that came up around some of what St. Justin and everyone's been talking about was just kind of in terms of if we have like some kind of synchronicity of that sort. I would probably say we do with our planet. And I was just thinking in terms of like how water might impact what that is. Just water seems like a carrier of so much information and nutrition and other things. There have been studies like Matsumoto and others to look at like how water is impacted by things like mood, and like the energy that we carry can change the shape of what a water crystal may measurably look like. And you know, so much of what we're made of relates to water. How we function in the world comes back to water. We have like most of our planet is covered in water. You know, it's a very connective part of how we exist and how our planet works. And so I guess in a way, I'm just kind of wondering if maybe water ties us into like how that might work in terms of how would we gather. I mean, obviously air, probably all the systems that we interact with through our planet, you know, breathing and water as well. But water just kind of comes to mind as being very part of everything we do and how we interact with our planet. Like, we have to have water to live, above like all else. If you can go more time, like if you have water, you can live longer, even if you're running out of food. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll be in great shape. So kind of on a different track, though, another thought that I had, just to throw something else into the pool the last 3 minutes here, was about dreaming. And for myself, I have an experience that I've read about, I've also experienced, where I believe that I've had dreams of things that occur in my life after I've dreamed them. And I'm a little curious, because sometimes I have recurring dreams about events, if maybe it's also tied into things like either past life or kind of reincarnation type states. But that's another, kind of interesting aspect of dreams, in my view at least, is just that that experience of having dreamed something and then having, I guess, a deja vu or a lived out experience of that dream later on. So I just thought I'd kind of put that on the table. I think that's another strange and interesting thing about how dreams can sometimes be experienced, or what role, another mysterious part of like what role do dreams have in our reality, and and kind of how do they work and why do we have them. But
Excellent.
Anyway, interesting topic. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, thanks for saying. It's funny how, like, while you were speaking, people were gathering into almost a cult around you. Like, everybody's just like gathering in a circle, which is really cool. I like the way that there are more people than average. That's why people there are new formations, which I love watching. Okay, so next hand raise. Let's see. Down of the deer, right? Something. Oh, sorry if I mispronounced that. Let me give you a megaphone.
No, I think we skipped Callista. Oh, no, we didn't. Sorry about that.
So, I just got a couple points. I just want to say, Callisti, I agree. Water is an amazing conductor of electrical energy, so absolutely.
And just the shape, yeah.
My question actually is, so my question was about, I've heard it a couple times today, the use of the word frequency. Are we talking from a scientific point of view, or some kind of spiritual interpretation of the word frequency? I just want to make sure I'm on the same.
Good question. I think it's the same situation as with quantum theory. Let me switch to another video, though. I think quantum theory has one meaning, but like in the popular culture, it started being almost abused. And that's why we now have like these two different directions of the same word. And I was wondering, it's a good question. It's a very good question, because it's very curious to me to understand that is this word and idea is abused just because it kind of has like linguistically on the surface it has like similar meaning, or maybe it has a real connection. I would love to ask like a physicist or somebody to explain me what is like behind that frequency thing. Like, is it just like the oscillation and how far the wave peaks from each other? And like that frequency could be anything, and it doesn't really mean like one thing. It could be like many things. Maybe radio waves, any wave has frequency, I believe, and maybe that's, I don't know what's the real connection between these two concepts. I
was just going to say that, I mean, frequency is literally just the number of occurrences of a repeating event per unit of time.
Exactly.
That's just the standard definition of frequency. So I always try to understand how that word is being injected in the conversations to explain so many or back up so many discussions or arguments. I'm just trying to understand the use of that word and exactly what does that mean. So can I safely assume it's not from a scientific point of view, from a physics point of view, it's more from a spiritual point of view?
Yeah, I would say the way I understand these frequencies, I believe that there's some more people, like, for example, Jet, she would have like, I think, more profound or clear definition, but I don't see her here. But I would say like what they mean, and I partly mean because I still like listen to all different, sources of information. And I would say like what they, yes, she's back. And by frequency, I would mean energy. Like, you kind of emit some kind
Yeah,
of
in
energy,
general.
because like I believe it could be explained rationally by body language, because when you see a body language of a person, you kind of see their, you know, features, the way they behave, what kind of type, like what type of person they are, and how they may influence you, or maybe the space, or maybe the atmosphere in the company and stuff like that. And I believe that people who have like that way of understanding things, like more in a spiritual way, they would probably mean something like that, like different kinds of energies that they feel. And probably I would say that there are different types of energies. Like I would like one frequency, let's so, like, or maybe other people would have a different energy or frequency, like aura.
So,
I
so
understand it in that way. Jet, would you like to add something to that? I also have
so
some hand raised.
actually, as if I may,
Go ahead, go ahead. Hold on a sec. Did you mute?
is not we're not using it in a physics point of view then, or a scientific point of view.
Exactly.
It's more from a spiritual point of view as well. Okay, so I just wanted to, because there was a couple individuals that were speaking, and I definitely enjoyed what Justin had to say, because I can back what he's talking about receiving radio frequencies being broadcast as a signal, and potentially being able to pierce the membrane or auditory cortex, so we are receiving signals. So I can say, yeah, I enjoyed that, but that's from a scientific point of view. So I just wanted to make sure that there is a clear distinction between, from a scientific point of view, and more of like an energy in spirituality is a
different box,
more of a widespread
Why does it
belief
sound
in
like
an
the same?
interpersonal, non-physical essence. So that's what we're talking more about then, I'm assuming?
I think we just
It sounds like you're saying two different sides of the same thing to me. Like to me, when I hear frequency or energy, it all sounds like the same thing, though. And when you're just defined it, it still kind of sounds like the same thing to me.
I mean, no,
I don't know.
if I'm not mistaken,
And that was going to be my 5 cents on it.
Go ahead, Jet.
Sorry.
Yeah, but
Can I have a
That
microphone?
was just going to be my basic.
I'll do.
You can't really.
I got you, Fizzle.
The scientific. To say, can you define whether it's scientific or spiritual? To me, it's the same thing. It's just the scientific people are not accepting of a lot of the spiritual side. We accept things a lot more readily because we feel it, whereas science wants numbers and backed up proof.
But yeah, they want to define. But wouldn't filling it over a period of time considered scientific proof? I don't know.
Science is a method to bypass. It's an intentional act of or effort to bypass that feeling that you're talking about. So the scientist is acknowledging that they have that potential to jump to a conclusion of feeling, and they're not necessarily disregarding that as meaningful. What they're doing is saying this interferes with an observation of unbiased exploration. And so we as a species, as a culture, have developed a method to not to completely shut out the spiritual, but to put it on pause, to allow us to work around that part of our psyche that limits us. Ironically, spirituality can limit us to a very specific type of process and inhibit us from doing something like landing hitting Mars as a target. Say. Or these or even understanding what Mars is.
Yeah, I agree.
But what I really wanted to comment on was the while I was waiting to say it, Dawn of the Dead kind of got on it a little bit, and what I see a lot. No, it's great. It's but the thing that I see happen a lot is the first of all, the misunderstanding of what science is. Second, so I think you're right that people are going back and forth between different contexts of words and language. And Ozzy, I liked when you used the word abuse in reference to wielding something like quantum mechanics in certain ways.
Quantum psychology, that was the strangest combination, I would say. I'm like, this sounds like a marketing product for some housewife who wants to make more money.
It's a marketing for a book.
Yeah, like something like. So I kind of
the issue that I see. I just want to finish this thought. The issue that I see is the so it's I think it's a great thing that we do as minds to analogize things, and it allows us to leap and to understand things that we haven't experienced because we can make connections to them. The problem that I see arises when you don't notice you're doing it, and when a scientist talks to you about the fact that a frequency is one of two primary, characteristics of a wave, which the other one being amplitude, and that those things, describe vibration, and they relate to the concept of energy. And when a scientist says these things, they mean very specific things that are backed by centuries of measurement and testing. And
mathematical formulas.
When you take that language and step into the spiritual with it, you can only ever be analogizing at that point. And when you try to do something other than analogize with it and try to use it to, which is I think what people are doing, there's a defensiveness in the spiritual, in that, and rightfully so, because people believe things in a spiritual way, so that and people who don't believe will attack that and attack it with facts. And so the response, which makes a whole lot of sense to me, that you would go to this place, is to back your point with proof, which is now stepping back into the measurable. We're out of faith and we're into the measurable. So when you start hypothesizing into science with a spiritual bent, even a scientist who's not offended, which ideally they wouldn't be, but they're going to look at you and challenge you with numbers and math and your understanding of what you're talking about, because understanding is critical. And so the what if, or the energy works like this, and these things are over here, and vibration is this, and therefore I could imagine these things potentially being true, is, I think, a valuable form of thought. Just that there's a division and there's a certain sort of maintenance in the thought process that I think is very important when you are trying to relate it to the measurable and our accumulated body of measurable empirical knowledge. They're two very separate domains.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for your different perspective. I love it. Paul, actually, you do have a megaphone, and you were just right next to Fizzle on the list as well. So it's just your time to speak.
Yes.
It's high time.
I just want to say one thing before I come on to the thing I really want to say. I'm on the same wavelength or frequency as Fizzle. Same understanding. Sorry.
Nice way to put it.
Yeah. Now I want to go back to something Callista said about how a dream can manifest in reality. I just want to relate a quick experience I had. I was in America. We'd hired a car with some friends, went on a very long beach. It was either called Virginia Beach or Atlantic Beach. It was a 4-mile long sandy beach.
I've been there.
We lost the keys in the beach. Yeah, we lost the keys in the beach. So it'd be almost impossible to find. I had a dream, and I dreamt it 3 times. I dreamt it, I said, "Oh, I've just dreamt we're going to find the keys." And I said to the bloke who'd hired the car, "We're going to find the keys." He said, I fell back to sleep. I woke up again. "We're going to find the keys." He said, I said, I fell back asleep. I had the same dream, and I dreamt it again. "We're going to find the keys." So that time he got very cross. However, he went to the beach, and his wife, and it could have been anywhere on the 4-mile beach, but it obviously would be somewhere near where we were. He just put her hand down under the sand and picked up the keys.
Miracle.
I know human beings are very, they can't understand probabilities, but that does seem rather improbable.
Exactly.
Because the keys were buried under the sand on a 4-mile beach, I dreamt it 3 times. I've never had any one of those before, but that just relates to what Callista said, how dreams can manifest.
Yeah, it's...
I dreamt it 3 times, one after the other.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing.
I've got an example.
I kind of take this approach where I try to, be between both sides. I would say that scientific approach gives me immediate answers. Like right now, what we have in our paradigm today, we have some data on this. And when I talk about and speculate on spiritual points, I do find it curious because maybe it's just interesting as a thought experiment, at least, because these things, they just might be true, but not today. Maybe they're true in a different time scale or like a size scale. So that way, that's why it's just fun to discuss and, you know, think about it as a thought exercise, I would say. But I keep them in two different boxes. So like science is for immediate answers, like in some more information, whereas like spiritual is just for more like flight of imagination, I would say, or like, you know, bring in that sphere of thoughts, ideas into combination. So that way in science, I could be also creative. So that way I can change some approaches and find creative, solutions in my thinking process and new ideas and new thoughts. Great. Okay. I have 7 hand raises. Oh my God. I haven't expected it to be so popular. Okay. So Saint Justin, you are on. Hold on a sec. You're somewhere on the list. I'm sure you are, but yeah, there you go. Megaphone. You are kind of next on the list. So if you have something to say, it's your chance.
Yeah. So to answer that question, I would see it as one and the same. The scientific approach and the spiritual approach, or the religious approach, or the scientific mind approach, they are one and the same, except for one is a little bit more rigid and has data to provide, and the other one is a little bit more creative. Mm-hmm. And we have that sort of logic side and also creative side in our brain, and it has to work together. You have to have the rigid logical side, but you also have to have the creative, spontaneous, fluid side as well. Mm-hmm. And then on another point, as far as science is concerned, we have completely surpassed the point of understanding that the nature of our spirit is totally interactable. Mm-hmm. Every time that you touch your phone, every time that you play on your Oculus, you are literally using your spirit to communicate or interface with that. It's a biofrequency. There's a frequency between 9 hertz all the way up to 13 hertz. Mm-hmm. I've actually recorded it on my website. Recorded it in multiple different fashions. It's testable. It's provable. There is no, if or when. It is a scientific, study that many people in the biofrequency arena have completely divulged their entire career to. I would definitely encourage, if you're interested in that kind of perspective.
I am actually
Max Planck.
I'm actually trying to send messages, so that way can you give me like references so I can send message to everybody and they can go to your website and check that stuff, or maybe what they could find on YouTube or anything. Any recommendations on that? Because I didn't have time to actually dive into that. Mm-hmm.
As far as my website is concerned, you can go to cybervines.com. As far as the other is concerned, Max Planck Institute.
Hold on, I'm
there's
typing.
An entire library.
What's your website once again?
cybervines.com.
Mm-hmm. Vines, like VINE. You can also message it to me so I can double check. Oops.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I remember you told me about this biofrequency stuff, and I was very curious. So that's like a bridge, cyber vines. Yeah, that was correct. So, and that's an interesting bridge, I think, between these two now.
Max Planck. Mm-hmm. If you do Max Planck Institute, it's an entire library on the subject, and the development of quantum theory is essentially that. That our entire framework, our human framework, is living energy, and we're literally living energy trapped in a. And I love the last person that just said this. Kama Sutra said that we're a machine.
Hardware.
He said that we were an engine. Hardware. Yeah, that's what he said. That's a perfect analogy. We are, universal hardware.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how you call.
It's not correct that that's the conclusion of quantum physics or quantum mechanics, though. I just to point it out, it's disingenuous to pretend that physicists are working on the concept of the spirit. That's not the language they're using.
There is ancient language, and there's language that is used in many different cultures that is based on religion and based on
you're talking about quantum physics,
concepts,
though, which is a
but it's
very
still the
modern
same
Eating
field of
chips,
exploration.
I can see that.
Oh, it was great.
Bon appetit, my friend. Sorry for interruption. It's very interesting conversation, by the way, between you guys, because they're like kind of two like legitimate polls. Jed, do you have something to add also too? Okay, so I had also Eric, Jet, Kumitsu, and Ollie on my list. So whoever wants to, let me give a word to newbies like Eric, for example. Eric, I think you.
Okay, thank you.
Yay! Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Welcome to Theory of Everything.
Well, first of all, English is
Welcome.
not my primary language, so I will try to express myself the best way I can.
Sure.
Cool.
Feel free.
I think that one of the problems that we have is that we don't understand the way that matter relates to spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we don't actually know what matter is. We know how. Okay.
Yeah. Do you if I'm not like Denmark? Entschuldigen Sie, sorry. Please don't step so close. I feel uncomfortable looking at you guys because it's kind of close. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Dankeschön. Okay. So Eric, please continue.
Okay. I think that we don't actually know what matter is. We know how matter behaves. And this is one of the things that many philosophers, like, for example, Bertrand Russell has said, that we don't know the interior of matter, so to speak. We know that particles and molecules and all these things that physicists study interact with one another. And so we can model those behaviors through formulas and through equations.
Yeah.
But we don't actually understand what matter is in itself. We know how it connects or how it relates to other stuff. And actually, this is one of the biggest problems that we have in what is called the hard problem of consciousness.
Oh, yes.
Which is a term coined by philosopher David Chalmers. He says that we don't actually know how consciousness originates from matter because matter is structural. The only thing that we know about matter is its structure, its order. But consciousness seems to be an experience, seems to be something that is interior, and that's why I think that there are no scientific evidence, or there are no scientific knowledge about how consciousness could possibly arise from matter. And if you look into the literature, if you look into articles from philosophy of science, from philosophy of mind, from neuroscience, there are no clues about how it happens. But like I said, there are, for example, philosophers like Whitehead, which was one of the greatest physicists and one of the greatest mathematicians and philosophers of the 20th century, who actually said that we need to understand this interior or this dimension of matter that can only be experienced. And it's a matter that it's spirit and spirit that it's matter at the same time. So, for example, he said that particles like protons, like neutrons, have an interior perspective and an exterior side. And the thing is that science only studies objects from an exterior point of view. It can only, for example, see that an electron or that a particle has impacted on a screen. And it can observe that behavior, but it cannot understand how it will be like to be a particle, for example. Like it cannot understand how it will be to be a human being, another human being, or another animal, or a plant, for
or
example.
a stone, or anything.
Science does not have. Yes, so science cannot, by its own method, by its own way of working, and access to those dimensions. But it is wrong to assume that because science does not have those access to those dimensions don't exist. It will be a fallacy to think like that, and it will be a way of think that privileges science, that universalizes science in a knowledge or to objective knowledge. For again, subjective knowledge, like for example meditation or like psychedelic experiences.
Excellent. I added you as a friend because you have a lot of interesting, and your English is great, actually. Great. Okay, thanks for sharing a lot of stuff there.
That's what I was thinking too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my God, I have so many hand raises. I'm afraid if I, by mistake, if I skip anybody, please forgive me in advance. Okay. So Jet, do you still have anything to share? And then I have Komitsu, which is Kama Sutra for tonight.
Yeah. Slip of the tongue there.
Hold on a sec. You don't have a megaphone, I see. Let me fix that problem.
Yeah, sorry, I do. I just want to finish what I was saying earlier before I got shut down. But so I was saying to Mendes, you said, isn't feeling it scientific in itself? I think that goes to, firstly, who is feeling it. If you're a scientist and you're feeling it, highly more likely